there, I'm Bonnie McCaffery, and thank you so much for coming back this month for another VidCast. I am here with the beading queen, Nancy E. Ha, and she has done some fabulous things with beading, and she has a couple of books.
So this book, Bead Creative Art Quilts, is very appropriate for art quilters who want to add abstraction in beads on their quilts.
Yeah. And so here's one of the quilts that is in the book. Now this, I love the colors, first of all, but this is a really neat thing that's happening here. What is that?
I call that the beaded coil stitch, and the process is taking anything that is smooth in texture, a rope, rat tail, drawstring from a hooded sweatshirt, basting it down in place, and then taking rows and rows of beads and wrapping them around the armature that has been stitched down.
And so here is a quilt where you've used that technique of the beaded coils.
I have, in a circular pattern, using a smaller armature than the first example we looked at.
Wow, this is a heavy piece. This has a lot of beads, and it makes it really heavy.
It's surprising how some very small glass beads, if they're used in great quantities, can make even a small quilt quite heavy. One thing you have to remember if you're going to use an excessive amount of beads on a beaded quilt is that some stitches have to go through all layers of your fabric, the back, the batting, and the quilt front. What I like to do is bead through the batting and the quilt front and then fuse the backing on. That way you can hide all your beading stitches between the layers, and you know that the top and the batting and the back are all secured together, so that the front of the quilt doesn't droop when you put it on the wall from the weight of the beads.
Yeah.
This is a beaded kaleidoscope, and what it is, it's a spin-off of another technique I have explored and developed, invented, called aerial beading. And what aerial beading is, you put supports down on your fabric made of beads, and then all the lines on the fabric of beads are actually elevated off of the surface, as you can see by the stylus. Actually what this is some samples from my second book, Bead Creative Like Crazy, beading techniques inspired by crazy quilts. But what I've done with this circular quilt is I've taken some of the beading stitches from Bead Creative Like Crazy and used them in a non-traditional, a non-crazy quilt way to make an abstract quilt.
How big is your bead stash?
Embarrassingly big.
But you're a professional. You need to own all of those beads.
And you always come across a new color, a new shape that you just have to add to your stash. So it's continually growing too. Yeah, I think it's important to have diversity in the quilt, that adds interest by the buttons and the different shapes and colors of the beads. And some are shiny and some are matte surfaced, and that too I think is a good mix.
So is that your rationalization for why you have to buy more beads? Oh,
That's
it's a different texture, it's a different color, it's a different shape.
Right.
So this looks like the cover of this book. This is your other book that's in print.
Yes. Contained in the book, there's such stitches as the beaded chain stitch, the lazy daisy.
Which you're going to show us a little bit, kind of how to do?
Yeah. Fly stitch, a variety of stitches I've taken and made beading patterns of them. The most frequent response I get from people when they see my work and say, "You did this all by hand," the next comment will be, "I'd never have the patience." And what I tell them is that it's not about patience, it's about relaxing. You get kind of into the zen of beading, feeling the beads come through the fabric, picking them up. It's a quiet time where you can think of, solve problems or think of ideas, and really the time just flies by.
Yeah, yeah.
I made this fan to put in isolation the stitches I teach in my crazy beading workshop.
Yeah. One of the things that I remembered learning in your class was kind of this, I guess this is a better example of it. This loom here, it looks like it's almost padded, and the whole thing is made out of beads.
Well, what I've discovered is a way to make a totally beaded motif so that it is opaque and not transparent, Because beads are hard glass pixels, no matter how tightly you sew the lines of beads together on your fabric, some of the background fabric always shows through the lines of beads. And so to make this loom look opaque and not translucent, what I do is I use a product called Lacy Stiff Stuff, and it is a fibrous medium. What I do with the Lacy Stiff Stuff is I find myself a copyright-free image. I print that on a piece of paper. I lay my copyright image with the Lacy Stiff Stuff on top of the image, and then I trace it with a pencil. Once I have traced the entire image with a pencil, then I cut it out of the Lacy Stiff Stuff. I take colored pencils, or you can use fabric markers that are waterproof, and I'll color in the areas of the stiff stuff to correspond with the color of bead I'm going to be putting in that area. So now the backdrop of your bead color is the same as the color of the beads, and you do get an opaque look. Frequently asked question, people say, well, do you take the Lacy Stiff Stuff out afterwards? And the answer is no. And that's why, Bonnie, you're seeing that it looks almost padded and more three-dimensional. Yeah. This block shows you the completely beaded motif again, and it's our state flower, the lady slipper.
Tell me about this, because this is just gorgeous.
The beaded dragonfly, I make the tulle wings outlined in gold thread on my sewing machine, and the body of the dragonfly is once again the beaded coil technique we looked at a little bit earlier.
And speaking of flowers, because there was a flower there, this is pretty neat because it's not heavily beaded, but there's like a beading on the edge.
Exactly, it's a beaded edge stitch. And I have a love of ultra suede because when you cut ultra suede, it never frays. So you don't have to have a hem or a seam on the end of the ultra suede. So I work a picot edge beading stitch. And this is a section of roses. I have developed other flowers as well, the poppy, the daffodil, the pansy, and they're available as kits on my website, beadcreative.com.
And then you have some lettering here. This is an interesting thing.
Below the lettering, it is contained in one of my books, and it's also a workshop. I teach people how to write script.
With beads?
With beads.
Okay, Nancy. Now, show me how you do these little loop-de-loo flower things here.
Okay. What it is, it's a takeoff on the embroidery stitch called the Lazy Daisy. And what I'm doing here is I'm going to pretend that I already have the center of the flower on my fabric. So my needle and thread passes through the fabric from the wrong side to the right side, and I'm going to pick up a series of beads on my needle and thread. I pick up an even number of beads, and these are size 11 beads. So the number of beads that is the smallest number humanly possible for a size 11 is an 8. Once you have the beads on your needle and thread, you press them down to your fabric so they're stacked on each other, and I'm going to move all the beads out of the way except the first bead I put on. I'm going to take my needle and thread, pass it through that bead number 1 and the fabric with one stitch, and pull the thread tension tight. So there's the first part of my Lazy Daisy. Now I can leave it loose and floppy like this. I could lay it down on the fabric and take a stitch through the bead that's at the very tip and anchor it to the fabric so it's flat. Or a third option is I can come up with my needle and thread inside that loop, and I would take a short number of beads. Today I'm going to do 3. Let them fall down to the fabric. And I'm going to make them arc over the end of the Lazy Daisy stitch, or the petal stitch as I call it, pull my thread tension tight, and then we've added a little bit more tension, a little bit more texture, and a slight point.
That's great. This is really neat, and it's great to see how you add so much texture. Now, I like to throw in a little question at the end, maybe, and my question to you is, what is your philosophy of life? My philosophy of life is, it's a good idea to have fun,
And it's okay to take creative risks. One of my favorite sayings is from Pablo Picasso, who says, "We are all born artists. The problem is remaining one." And I really encourage adults to take creative risks. Beads can't hurt you.
No, they can't. And they're good for you. You have fun. It's a meditative thing. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. It's a pleasure seeing you again.
Yeah, it's great. And thank you all for watching, and I hope you'll come back next month to see what I have for you then. Thanks for being with me.